Mankind has always looked to the stars. Since time immemorial, the universe has been a source of fascination and fundamental questions. What else is out there? How was all this created? Where do we come from? Mankind has left the Earth. Living in space has become almost routine. But weightlessness is a state that terrestrial bodies are not designed for. Space is a deadly environment for unprotected human beings. And yet, people do live in space. Scientists and researchers, and even tourists have already floated above the Earth. Welcome to Spacetime with Ulrich Walter, astronaut and scientist. He knows, in space, incredible things are in store for us. This is the highest apartment sharing project in the world. 400 kilometers above the Earth's surface, the International Space Station orbits our planet. Weightlessness determines the daily routine of the six-man crew. A life with no up and no down. Everything that isn't fixed into place floats around freely. But human beings are designed for gravity. Everyday tasks considered routine on Earth take on an entirely new dimension in weightlessness.
Hardly a day goes by without people asking me, Herr Walter, what's it like? How do you eat up there? How do you use the toilet? And how do you sleep in space? These are all topics that interest you as well, I know. But there are also questions like, what if someone gets sick up there and falls seriously ill? Or what do you do if there are conflicts between the astronauts? How do you deal with that? All very interesting subjects, right up to the question, tell me, is sex possible in space?
Life in space is life in permanent extremes, which the human body is not made for. But our curiosity drives us on, and more people are spending more and more time away from our planet. Man has set foot on the moon. He has sent probes to the very edge of our solar system and landed robots on Mars. Yet there is one thing today's engineers have not yet been able to put into practice: a shower that works properly in weightlessness.
I've heard from an astronaut that the station, when you first arrive, sometimes smells a bit like an old gym, but you quickly get used to it and don't even notice. So, I mean, up there, it's hygienic, but it's different to how we do things on Earth.
The main task on the space station is science. Everything else is subordinated to this.
Well, you can't take a shower on the space station because there isn't one. But it's not so bad either. It's a bit like being on a campsite or something. I mean, no showers, but there are these wet wipes. You don't exactly feel as clean as you would after a shower, but it's no big deal. Just use the wet wipes and you feel a bit dirtier than you would normally.
Those living on board the space station are part of the greatest experiment in human history. And yet their working day is very similar to that of other shift workers on Mother Earth.
You get up at 6:30 in the morning, have an hour or so to yourself to get washed and have breakfast before the conference with Mission Control at 7:30. This is what starts the day. Then you actually work your shift through till 7 in the evening, when there's another conference with Mission Control to discuss what needs to be done the following day. You look at a few things like procedures you'll be carrying out the next day, get the tools ready that you'll need so you don't have to do it in the morning, and then it's time for your evening meal. Shortly after that, you have an hour or so to yourself when you can do your own things.
The simplest tasks on Earth become logistical challenges in weightlessness.
Let's see, to get started, these are the things I need. A bag of warm water, a little no-rinse shampoo, towel, and my comb. What I like to do is start by just putting some hot water, squirting it onto my scalp. And I have a mirror here so I can kind of watch what I'm doing. Sometimes the water gets away from you, and you try and catch as much as you can. Then I just work the water up through to the ends of my hair. And I take my no-rinse shampoo and squirt it also on the scalp, just a little bit, and rub it in. Again, kind of working it out to the ends. And sometimes I'll actually take my comb to help work it all the way to the ends. And I like to take my towel while I have the shampoo in there and just kind of work it. Because without standing under running water, you kind of need to use the towel a little bit to help get some of the dirt out.
The hairstyle itself determines how much care is actually required.
And that's it. Thank you.
The space station is a high-technology structure. Between life support systems, computers and laboratories, the crew finds its own space.
So this is Node 2. This is a really cool module. Of course, most of these modules you'll see they have 4 sides, and they're put together. That way we could sort of work on a flat plane, either a wall, a floor, another wall, or the ceiling. But, you know, again, all you have to do is turn yourself and your reference changes. The reason I'm bringing that up is because this is where 4 out of 6 of us sleep. And so people always ask about sleeping in space. Do you lie down? Are you in a bed? Not really, because it doesn't matter. You don't really have the sensation of lying down. You just sit in your sleeping bag. So here's one sleep station right here. I'm going in right now. You can follow me if you want. So I'm inside. It's sort of like a little phone booth, but it's pretty comfy. I've got a sleeping bag right here that we sleep in, so we don't have sort of like a little bit of a cover. We don't fly all over the place. But you know, you can sleep in any orientation. I have it sleeping, feeling like I'm standing up right now, but like you saw, I'm on the floor. But it doesn't matter if I turn over and I sleep upside down.
In a way, the sleeping bag is just there to hold you in place and keep you warm. And I really liked it. There are also colleagues who say, I didn't sleep very well there. I need the feeling that there's something underneath my back. And so if you need that, you can span a few of these elastic bands across the sleeping bag to press you up against the wall or ceiling, or wherever you happen to have your sleeping bag. But I must say I really slept wonderfully well in the weightless environment.
The sleep station is also like a little office. We've got a computer in here. As you can see, we've got a couple little toys. I've got some books. I've got some clothes and other things that make it sort of like home.
Orbiting the Earth, even very simple tasks are highly complicated. The lack of gravity also creates difficult conditions for the morning bathroom rituals.
Well, here is the bathroom, essentially. You get up in the morning, and we have a little kit, and it has all the essential things that you need, like your toothbrush and toothpaste and brush. See how much better the brush makes my hair look? I'm just joking. It still stands up straight. It doesn't matter where you are. It's always going to stand up straight while you're up in space. A lot of people ask about toothbrush and toothpaste. So, luckily enough, toothpaste, you can do it upside right this way, is sticky, and so it sticks to your toothbrush, no problem. Another cool thing is that water sticks to your toothbrush too. If you can see it, I'll have some water come out. The water is pretty neat up in space. It'll stick to your toothbrush, and it will make a big bubble. And that's just by surface tension. And then you can drink it. So a lot of people ask about what do you do with the toothpaste after you brush your teeth. Two options. Swallow it, and it's sort of like mouthwash, but it tastes a little gross. Or you can just spit it out in a paper towel, and then you don't have to worry about it.
What is the daily rhythm like up there on the space station? Well, actually, there are two rhythms. A quite normal 24-hour rhythm, like on Earth. And the time up there is Greenwich Mean Time. That's Central European Winter Time minus 1 hour. Then there's another rhythm, the day-night rhythm, determined by the orbit. You're flying around the Earth once every 90 minutes, so it's light for 45 minutes and dark for 45 minutes. It's hard to imagine how strange that is. You look outside in the morning, it's light, and you get up. You brush your teeth, have your breakfast, and then it's dark again. So those are two very different rhythms. The day begins at 6 in the morning when you get up. Then you have a little breakfast and go straight to work in one of the space labs.
Training astronauts takes several years. And of course, they also learn how to use the space toilet.
Here we are at the throne. This is awesome. You might see the little, you might have noticed the little moon on the outside. This is our orbital outhouse right here. And of course, it serves for two functions. Number 2, right here. I'll show you. But you see it's pretty small, so you have to have pretty good aim, and you'll be ready to make sure things get let go the right direction. And it smells a little bit, so I'm closing it up. And that's, of course, for number 2. And this guy right here is for number 1. So they're sort of two slightly separate functions, but you can do a little, essentially both, by hanging on right here and doing number 1 and number 2. I might add it's color-coded, so you really don't get it mixed up, which is nice. This is yellows for number 1. And also, there's a selection of paper. People always ask about toilet paper. What do you do with toilet paper? What kind of toilet paper do you have? We have gloves, just because sometimes it does get messy. We have some Russian wipes, which are a little bit coarse if you like the coarse type of toilet paper. We have some nice tissues, which are nice and soft if you like soft toilet paper. We have Huggies, just for any cleanup. You know, we were all babies once, and this sort of helps. And then if things get really out of control, we have disinfectant wipes, just to make sure we clean up here. Because, you know, just like the water I showed you, the number 1 stuff can sort of go all over the place if you don't aim correctly. And did I mention both of these have a little bit of suction, so they should keep things going in the right direction. But like I said, sometimes things get a little out of control if you are out of control yourself flying around. So we have lots of protective stuff. And of course, you do have your privacy. There's a little door.
The first space station was launched into orbit by the Soviets in 1971. The Russians had lost the race to the moon, but they certainly lay down a marker with the Salyut 1 space laboratory. The first crew consisted of 3 cosmonauts who spent 32 days in orbit. Tragically, disaster struck on the scientists' return to Earth. A valve inside the Soyuz capsule opened too early, and within minutes, all the oxygen had escaped. When they were recovered, the 3 cosmonauts, Dobrovolsky, Volkov, and Patsayev, were already dead. They had suffocated. In 1973, using a converted version of the Saturn V moon rocket, the Americans launched their space station, Skylab. 440 kilometers above the Earth, NASA also wanted to investigate the effects of weightlessness on the human organism. In Skylab, the astronauts conducted countless scientific experiments. And while doing so, they discovered the lightness of being. Jogging in space, they emulated film director Stanley Kubrick, whose science fiction saga 2001: A Space Odyssey had hit the cinemas 5 years previously. In his masterpiece, Kubrick plays extensively with the themes of weightlessness and artificially generated gravity. Released from their own weight, flying through nothingness in a metal barrel, an extraordinary experience for the Skylab crew. In 1986, the Soviets put their so far largest space laboratory into orbit. The Mir, Russian for peace, was mankind's first permanent outpost in space, the first space station designed for long-term operation. And the Mir's success consolidated the Soviet Union's status as a space power. This laboratory orbiting the Earth also became a symbol for the end of the Cold War. And in 1995, the US launched its Atlantis shuttle up to the Red Space Station. Americans and Russians coming together in space. More than 100 cosmonauts and astronauts from the whole world spent time on board Mir. Among them, 4 Germans. After 15 years of service, the space station was deorbited and brought down into the Pacific Ocean.
And then, based on the Mir station, the Russians and Americans together set up a joint space station. That was in 1998, and it's still up there today, the International Space Station. And meanwhile, it weighs over 300 tons.
The football field-sized space laboratory is operated as a multi-nation project involving 14 countries. The International Space Station, ISS, is made up of individual modules and over the years has grown steadily to its present size. The station, meanwhile, has 2,200 cubic meters of working and living space. Research is carried out both inside and outside the station, both for the benefit of humans and also for the future of space travel. Scientists want to find out whether man can survive permanently beyond his home planet.
A key purpose of the ISS is to prepare for human space exploration to other destinations. And we're really doing that there already. For example, we're developing a closed-loop life support system, which is really critical because as we get further from the Earth, we don't want to be sending up consumables all the time.
The cultivation of lettuce and vegetables on the ISS was a first important step for future life in space. Oxygen, drinking water, food and fuel for returning to Earth. For a multi-year mission into the depths of space, not all supplies can be taken along. Consequently, systems have to be developed that not only recycle the air we breathe and the water we drink, but which can also supply food and fuel. A mission to Mars is scheduled to take several years, so it just won't be possible to supply the astronauts from the Earth.
The big challenge for the Mars mission is that if you really want to fly people there, you have to create systems that are totally autonomous by then. So you actually have to set up a small biosphere there.
All over the world, scientists and engineers are conducting the basic research a Mars mission will require. How can the food supply be guaranteed? What will the accommodation on Mars have to be like? And what must it be able to do? There are quite a few home comforts that future space travelers will also have to do without.
You wanted to know how we wash our clothes in space. Well, actually, we don't. We don't have a washing machine here, and also it would use up a lot of water, and water is very scarce in space. We also recycle our water, and we only use it to drink or to wash.
And to play with, or conduct experiments. How liquids behave in weightlessness is an important field of research, elementary for the construction of fuel and life support systems that can operate in space. The water used in the space station's air conditioning and onboard toilet is treated and reused. For drinking too. Around a third of the water needed is provided by the recycling system.
Water is unquestionably a precious commodity on board the space station. Take a bottle of water like this, 1 liter. How expensive would a liter of water be on the space station? Well, that can be calculated quite easily. As the rule of thumb says, every kilo taken to the space station costs approximately 10,000 euros. And since 1 liter is 1 kilo, if you were to buy this bottle up there, it would cost 10,000 euros. And that's the reason why water naturally has to be recycled. Up there, you have to conserve all the water you have, not only condensation, but also urine. Urine contains a lot of water. So what happens on the space station? All the urea and other biological substances are removed from the urine, which leaves you with almost pure water again. And the astronauts even have to drink that. And I'm sure you can imagine that the astronauts and cosmonauts resisted this for a very long time, though they have gradually gotten used to it.
Well over 200 space travelers have already been on the station, many of them several times. Among them were also 7 tourists who paid very handsomely for the privilege.
Here's a pretty cool place. This is sort of like in your house where everybody meets in the morning. After you wash your face, brush your teeth, you want to find something for breakfast. And this is our kitchen. You might notice there's all sorts of foods here. It's like opening the refrigerator. You got all your different stuff that you want to have: drinks, meats, eggs, vegetables, cereals, bread, snacks, and that's a good place. That's where you find all the candy. Side dishes, and then some little power bars just in case.
No tables, no chairs, no plates. On the space station, food just floats in the room, and you just float around it. Eating in weightlessness is a surreal experience that is never likely to lose its fascination. This orbiting restaurant may provide breathtaking views, but it is very expensive.
Every kilo transported up there requires enormous effort and expense, but it doesn't necessarily make the food taste better.
Nevertheless, things have changed considerably in extraterrestrial cuisine. There are now over 100 different dishes to choose from. A huge improvement on the cold paste in aluminium tubes from the early days of space travel.
This freeze-dried food is quite typical. It's cooked on Earth, then the water is removed, and then it's taken to the space station. This, for instance, is spaghetti bolognese, spaghetti with pieces of meat in it. So, up there, you take a spike. They have them in the kitchen. Stick it in the top here, add the required water, and wait a while until the liquid has spread through it. Then you cut across here with some scissors, slide a spoon or a fork under the flap, and you can eat it. That's one of the classical meals. And all the things you can't freeze-dry, like steaks or cheese, cheddar cheese for example, they are then thermostabilized, which means they are heated to ultra-high temperatures to remove all bacteria. That's why cheese is so popular. You can spread it on these crackers here. But the commander's not too fond of crackers when you eat them on their own, because then the crumbs fly around and clog up the electronics. That's why you spread the cheese on the crackers, and then they don't make crumbs. And of course, the other classical question is, how do you drink in space? I think one thing is clear, you can't just pick up a glass and drink. It doesn't work like that in weightlessness. So you have to do it like this. You take an aluminum sachet with powder inside. In this case, it's grapefruit. Then you stick the steel spike in again. Fill the bag with water and shake it up well until your drink is ready. Then you take one of these plastic straws, push it into the top, open here, and then you can drink. You don't have to drink it all at once. You can close it again and hang it on the wall. All these things here have a Velcro fastener, otherwise they would all be constantly floating around. So, that's all with regard to food. But there are also different eating cultures and habits. There are the Americans, for instance, who say, okay, we've got an hour, but let's just grab something quickly, get it down fast, and we can carry on. Oh no, say the French, let's take plenty of time and enjoy our food. And the Japanese are somewhere in between. On the other hand, the Americans say, wait, we've got to brush our teeth right now. As we all know, they clean their teeth 3 times a day. Ah, come on, say the Japanese, once a day is enough. You can't imagine how seriously people can argue about such things on board a space station.
The ISS is supplied regularly from Earth. It used to be done by Russian space freighters, and the space shuttle alone is now a billion-dollar business for private commercial enterprises. Food, water, fuel, and spare parts. Many tons of supplies are flown into space every year. Non-reusable supply capsules are then loaded with waste from the station. On returning to Earth, the waste and the capsules burn up in the atmosphere. Only the space station's energy supply is self-sufficient. Electricity is generated by huge solar panels. Everything else has to be delivered. Private companies also make use of the research opportunities on the space station. And even the astronauts themselves serve as guinea pigs for testing certain physical processes in weightlessness.
There are experiments that we perform ourselves on our own bodies to gain a better understanding of certain illnesses, such as osteoporosis, arteriosclerosis, and other things, like immune system disorders. We can actually examine and understand these things better in space, and then bring what we've learned back to Earth.
For instance, space technology can be found in surgical robots of the kind that were developed at the German Aerospace Center and tested on the space station. Research time in space is limited and very costly. The working days are therefore correspondingly long.
12 hours a day? Is that even legal? No, say the Germans, especially the employee representatives. 8 hours, 10 hours maximum. You can't imagine how big a problem that was. We had to negotiate with the Works Council representatives about whether we could be allowed to work 12 hours a day for 10 days.
It's not just inside the station that work has to be done, but outside as well. 400 kilometers above the Earth, floating in space at a speed of 28,000 kilometers per hour. Extravehicular activity is the astronaut's most complicated task. Strenuous, dangerous, but at the same time, breathtakingly impressive.
Living and working on board a space station is something really fantastic. If you then also have the chance to go outside, that's definitely another highlight. The preparations are very extensive, both the training on Earth and on board the space station when you have to prepare these extravehicular operations. The station had to be reconfigured, the spacesuits had to be serviced, and all the equipment that goes with you had to be prepared. So it's a lot of work, but being able to go outside is an absolute highlight.
Being outside the station amidst the sheer endlessness of the universe is probably the most intensive experience an astronaut can have. The only thing protecting him from the hostile, deadly emptiness of outer space is his spacesuit.
I call this actually a spacecraft. It has all the oxygen for you. It has all the carbon dioxide removal system for you. It also has a heating and cooling system to make sure to regulate our body temperatures while we're outside. It also has a computer, so it tells you on a display here if there's anything that's going wrong with the suit, if we're running out of oxygen, if we have too much carbon dioxide, or any type of electrical problem. So it's a pretty awesome little spacecraft, and actually got to go out, use my little spacecraft a couple times, and it worked like a charm. Lucky that it works very nice. You might want to see what the helmet looks like. It's pretty cool too. We don't usually go out like this, so you usually can see when the helmet's open. So you can see what it looks like inside. Somebody's little head would be inside of here. So you can see, you can turn your head all the way around while you're inside of there, but the helmet stays still. So that's determines your how far you could see. And it's usually pretty sunny out there, so we have to wear our sunglasses, and this is our sunglasses right here, which make you look pretty cool.
The suit warms or cools the astronaut depending on his position vis-à-vis the sun. It supplies them with oxygen and shields them from radiation. Without it, working outside the station would be impossible.
It's a very big machine. So sometimes it's routine maintenance. For example, they're replacing filters or, maintaining existing systems, or maybe in some cases something is broken and it's unforeseen. For example, in the past there's been problems with the ammonia system that they've had to fix on short notice. So this is all to be expected when you have such an exciting, innovative machine on orbit, that it needs to be updated and maintained.
Every task outside the station is planned meticulously in advance on Earth. In enormous water tanks, every move is rehearsed and tested on a replica of the station. Only underwater can weightlessness be simulated in any way realistically. In space, no one can afford to make mistakes. The psychological health of astronauts plays a vital role in their preparation. The cramped conditions and the extremely demanding work can easily lead to tensions.
A Russian cosmonaut who was up there for a month, then 3 months, and then a whole year once told me, if you're up there for a month, you can put up with almost anyone. If it's 3 months, you take a closer look at who's up there with you. And if it's a year, things can explode at the tiniest spark. Your colleague always squeezing the toothpaste tube in the middle could be that tiny spark that sets things off. So you can see conflicts can arise for lots of different reasons. There's said to have been an incident on the Mir station when a cosmonaut screamed to ground control that if he doesn't get out of here right now, I'll throw him out of the window.
However, there is another danger that is far more threatening for the space inhabitants. Flying debris which hits the station on a regular basis. Tiny meteorites, but also space junk poses a threat to the station and those on board. Larger bodies can be detected early and evaded, but the danger is very real. Hollywood gratefully took up this subject and dramatically staged a horror scenario. Though in space travel, accidents and even fatalities have happened, no one has as yet actually died in space. But the risk is ever present.
I'm often asked whether the movie Gravity is actually realistic. And I can only say, well, yes and no. For example, there are these superb shots of the Earth that look extremely realistic. That's exactly what the Earth's surface looks like by day and night. Great shots. On the other hand, there are unrealistic scenes. For example, the space debris. In space, in relation to the shuttle or space station, this space debris typically travels at a speed of around 5 to 7 kilometers per second. That means when a piece of debris is 5 to 7 kilometers away, it will hit me the very next second. Can you see debris of that size 5 to 7 kilometers away? No, not at all. So you can safely say all the scenes with space debris flying past are completely unrealistic.
Another great danger is fire on board. To extinguish a fire, you first have to know how it will behave. The astronauts burn small amounts of heptanol and methane in special canisters on board the station. Various materials are also lit to see how they burn in weightlessness. These experiments serve to develop fire extinguishing systems for future spacecraft, because even the smallest fire can seriously threaten the lives of the crew. A lesson NASA tragically learned during its Apollo moon program. The 3 astronauts, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee, were selected for the first test flight of the Apollo spaceship. During a ground test in January 1967, an electrical malfunction ignited a fire in the capsule. The astronauts could neither open the hatch nor extinguish the fire. They burnt to death in their capsule. Firefighting is part of the training for every mission into space. There are strict emergency plans for spacecraft and the space station. If the astronauts' reaction is wrong or too slow, they could die.
You actually spend hundreds of hours in the simulator with one malfunction after another. And you get into a sweat because you have to combine this, combine that, do this, everything at the same time. And then when it comes to the actual launch, most astronauts say the most irritating thing is that the red alarm lamp doesn't come on. And then suddenly everything works like a dream again.
But emergencies are never far away. In February 1997, a fire broke out on the Mir space station. Wearing breathing apparatus, the crew managed to extinguish the fire in 12 minutes using 4 extinguishers. The cosmonauts narrowly escaped disaster. Mir was kept in service until well beyond its designated lifespan. But Russian space technology proved to be robust and easy to repair.
Such devices can break down sometimes, and on board the Mir we often had to use spanners, multimeters, and soldering irons. We actually measured lots of things with a multimeter and discovered, aha, there's the fault, and repaired it with a soldering iron.
The crew of every space station has to carry out constant maintenance, and even the ISS has had its alerts and emergencies.
If we have any of those problems, we come right here, which we call the central post. It is the main heart of the space station. It was also the first computers that came up here that ran the space station. And so behind this wall right here are these main computers. So we gather here as a group of 3 or 6 and then figure out how we're going to either fight the fire, patch the hole, or solve the toxic spill.
But only in the most extreme emergency is anything done without first coordinating with Earth. Extravehicular operations can't be carried out at all without prior planning from ground control. A spacewalk is a precisely rehearsed and choreographed activity which is guided by the various control centers. The International Space Station is the greatest technological project of all time. Besides the 6 crew members, thousands of people on the ground are also working on this project, and they direct and monitor the astronauts' experiments and missions. Most of the time, it runs smoothly, but in emergency situations, it can also lead to conflicts.
Final decision-making power, just like on a ship, lies with the captain, in this case, the commander. However, in practice, it's somewhat different. Let's take a concrete example. An astronaut has appendicitis. So, first of all, of course, the level of urgency needs to be determined. That's usually decided by doctors on the ground based on the symptoms. If an immediate operation is needed, he gets into one of these Soyuz capsules. There are always 2 Soyuz rescue capsules on the space station so that in an emergency, crew members can be back on the ground within about 45 minutes. Another example, a piece of space debris collides with the station. The reaction must be immediate. The commander must decide, do we man the capsules and evacuate, or can we seal off a section of the station to prevent any loss of air? That's the commander's decision. It must be taken immediately and the appropriate action initiated. And then there's that tricky situation, when ground control, the commander and crew are of different opinions. What do you do then? This has actually happened. Ground control said, you have to do this. And those on the station said, we know better what we have to do right now. We're up here and we know what the situation is. It came very close to mutiny on the Mir. But in that actual case, the crew prevailed and the decision was taken by the commander.
Sport is compulsory for all space station residents. Weightlessness impairs the human body. Muscle mass and bone density decrease. For the return to Earth, training is vital for survival. The lack of gravity also has some influence on the genes responsible for our immune system. The human organism becomes more susceptible to infection. For their own inner balance and recreation, some play musical instruments, and their comrades simply put up with it. They can't leave anyway.
Got those space station blues. Don't know what I'm gonna do.
Well, I'm a terrible singer, so I don't think it would be a great success.
ISS Commander Chris Hadfield, on the other hand, shot to fame with a worldwide hit.
This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade. And the papers want to know whose shirts you wear. But it's time to guide the capsule if you dare. This is Major Tom to ground control. I've left forevermore. And I'm floating in a most peculiar way. And the stars look very different today.
With his own space-based cover of David Bowie's Major Tom, the Canadian astronaut became a pop star in his own right. Listening to and playing music is one of the very few possible leisure activities on the ISS.
It's hard to believe just how boring it is on the space station. But there's nothing better than sitting together after all the hard work, having a meal, and singing along to the guitar. Everyone loves doing that. So, what about drugs? No drugs, of course. But what about alcohol? Well, it's strictly forbidden for the Americans. But there are still the Russians, and they do drink. I'll show you how that works. Here we have space station vodka. Not for the ISS, but for the Mir. Double packaging so that nothing leaks out. Over the years, it's evaporated a little, but this was produced by Russians especially for the Mir station. The Americans don't allow it, but there are also Russian sections of the station. And you ought to know that Russian sections are subject to Russian rules. I think you can work the rest out for yourselves.
So have they done it or not? Had sex in space? Jane Fonda did, but only in the movie. As Barbarella in the 1968 film of the same name, the Astro agent didn't only give us the first weightless strip, but transformed into a genuine space sex tourist.
Barbarella is a 5-star, double-rated astronavigatrix Earth girl whose specialty is
Love.
It was in August 1982. Russia's second female cosmonaut, Svetlana Tsarskaya, flew up to Salyut 7. Awaiting her there were 2 Russian cosmonauts. The team physician, a certain Dr. Gatsenko, still insists today that the entire mission was undertaken with this one particular intention in mind. So, did anything come of it? Well, we know today that in terms of offspring at least, nothing did come of it. So, from that point of view, the mission failed. For future long-term missions, it's of course important to know how things like this work in theory. I mean sex, of course. A German space physician, a certain Herr Muttke, had already thought about this in the 1980s. And after due consideration, he came to the conclusion that you need to hold on to a pole, because as we know in weightlessness, you just float away. Although he did say there was another possibility, to copy the way dolphins do it. Now, I'm not sure if you know how dolphins actually do it, but they do it in 3s. 2 actively participate and the 3rd holds them together. That's why those who have actually had sex in space are known as members of the 3 Dolphins Club.
2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Endeavour.
In 1992, the space shuttle Endeavour was launched into space with the first married couple on board. US Americans Jan Davis and Mark Lee met during their astronaut training and fell in love. And before their joint mission, they got married in secret. But a lack of opportunity prevented Jan Davis and Mark Lee gaining membership of the 3 Dolphins Club. NASA was not amused by the revelation, and so during their mission together, husband and wife were assigned to different shifts. But once humans set off on long-term missions into the depths of space, traveling to Mars or founding colonies on other planets, space agencies and scientists alike will have to deal with the subject of sex and human reproduction in space. A mission to Mars will last for several years. The crew will be mixed and the loneliness extreme. Even NASA regulations will not be able to prevent close interpersonal relationships. The research into reproduction in space is still in its infancy. But the space agencies will certainly not want to bring back more people from their Mars mission than they actually sent. Moreover, there is no knowledge whatsoever on how life conceived and born in weightlessness can or will develop.
Man is a creature of gravity, and if we want to continue living our lives this way, and not change completely and become cyborgs or octopuses, then we will certainly need artificial gravity for future forays into space, if we want to survive, but also if we want to be able to reproduce. After all, in the right circumstances, we will want to grow as a population in such a multi-generation spaceship.
Inhabitable megastructures that create their own gravity. In the Hollywood film Elysium, one such space colony serves as the habitat of an elite, could afford to escape from an Earth sinking into chaos. In the mid-1970s, NASA too considered this idea. Gigantic circular structures that generate artificial gravity through their own rotational speed. Systems of mirrors reflecting the sunlight create the rhythm of day and night. Space travel today, however, is still struggling with much more trivial problems.
All astronauts worldwide, whether Russians, European, or Americans, are public service employees. And what do they have to do when they go on an official trip? Even if it's into space, they have to write an application for travel expenses, in which it says I'm flying into space. And what do you do when you return? You fill in a travel expenses claim. That contains questions like, how far did you travel? Well, I've just traveled 4.2 million miles. Do I get a mileage allowance for that? NASA's reply is, Herr Walter, did we fly you there or did you fly yourself? NASA is of course right. They flew me into space on the shuttle. What about a daily allowance? Herr Walter, says NASA, you had free room and board. Why do you need a daily allowance? Right again. But NASA continues. You did travel from home in Houston to the Kennedy Space Center and back, so we can give you some traveling expenses. How much was it? Well, one day I got this letter with a check. So how much did I get for my mission? You can see it right here. $34 for my 10-day mission. And believe it or not, that's the best possible souvenir of my mission anyone could imagine. And that's why I still have this check today.
Meanwhile, people now spend up to a year in space, on board the space station, in close orbit around the Earth. Man has flown to the moon, landed on it and returned. But in the not-too-distant future, mankind will really leave the Earth and venture hundreds of millions of kilometers deep into the universe for several years. Man will fly to Mars and land on the surface, perhaps even establishing settlements there. Scientists and engineers are already working on this vision. They are laying the foundations today for the life of the future, a life outside our home planet, Earth.